I felt the world tilt beneath me the moment the cake left her hands. 1 second I was raising my glass in a silent toast to our 6-year anniversary, the next, that 3-tiered confection arced through the air like a grenade, frosting and sponge exploding against my face. Frosting dripped into my eyes. I blinked, sweet, sickly cold against my lashes, and the gasp of the guests rippled across the garden. My fingers fanned the cream from my brow, tasting butter and disbelief. Somewhere a chair scraped. The string quartet's final note faltered, then died. She stood at the edge of the terrace, calm, triumphant, holding the empty cake stand as if nothing had happened. Petals of sugar roses fluttered at her feet. Behind her, his silhouette leaned in close, my wife's new lover, my brother's once trusted friend. "Enjoy the taste of betrayal," she called out, voice light as champagne bubbles. Silence stretched. Then laughter, sharp, mocking, from our friends. My heart pounded in my throat like it wanted out. I pressed a palm to my chest, feeling the ring weigh heavy on my finger. I tasted salt, not from tears, but from the metal tang of panic drowning me. I straightened. The napkin in my other hand shook, but I caught my breath, forced my lips into a polite curve. "May I have another?" I asked the maid, voice steady enough that Northwest One suspected how close I was to falling apart. As I dabbed at my mouth, fragments of her lies snapped into place. The mornings she claimed were long days at the office. The dry cleaning slips for a blazer she never brought home. The way she'd smiled at her phone, lips curling around someone else's name. I'd shrugged those moments off, until tonight. The waiter cleared a path. I leveled my gaze on her, on the faint curl of frosting at the corner of her lip. My pulse thudded in my ears. I felt every eye in the garden flick toward us, but I refused to flinch. "John," she said, stepping forward as if to remonstrate. "Don't make this more." "Why?" I interrupted, calm but brittle. The word sounded small, but it carried every question I'd swallowed over the past weeks. Why the lies? Why this spectacle? She opened her mouth, hesitated. His hand slid to her waist. I watched her for any flicker of regret, saw only defiance. I set the napkin down on a low table, each step measured. "I want to know who you've been telling your lies to," I said. "And why you thought tonight was the grand finale." A tremor shivered through her shoulders. Guests leaned forward, phones half raised. I could taste the tension, like metal on my tongue. She inhaled. Then exhaled a soft laugh. "You're such a fool," she murmured. "You've had every clue." I raised an eyebrow. "Tell me one." She cocked her head, considering. "Oh, I don't know, your trust. Your faith." She swept an arm at the party, "Our friends, our life. You never saw it coming." The bouquet of magnolia and night air stung my nostrils, but I held the moment. I let her words hang, like sugar mist in the lamplight. Then I turned away, walking back toward the house. With each step, I tasted steel, my resolve hardening like concrete. Inside, the powder room mirror stared back at me. I scrubbed at the remaining frosting until my reflection was raw, red-rimmed eyes, a smear of cream at my chin. I pressed a finger against the bruise blooming beneath my ring. No tears. No outburst. Just a slow, steady inhale. This is where it starts, I thought, tracing the scarlet circle on my skin. With their public shame. With my private promise. I wiped my palms on my suit and walked out, past lanterns flickering like silent witnesses, past the terrace clock that had chimed 6 times this evening. 6 chimes that once meant celebration. Tonight, they would mark the moment everything changed. And as I stepped back into the hum of faces and whispers, I felt calm settle around me. Betrayed, yes, but not defeated. The path ahead was clear: gather the pieces of her deceit, build my case, and reclaim my life with the same precision she'd used to destroy it. I still remember the scent of fresh-cut lavender hanging in the air the first time we repainted the nursery. Sunlight streamed through the windows as she traced her fingers along the wall, imagining our future daughter playing there. We laughed when I accidentally knocked over a paint can, purple splashes across the hardwood, and she scooped me up, holding my hands in hers as if I were the child. That evening, we toasted with cheap wine on the floor, our cheeks flushed with excitement and a faint purple bloom that would never fully come out of my jeans. But beneath those bright moments, the first shadows gathered. I found the coffee-stained napkin folded neatly in our bedroom drawer 3 weeks later, a receipt from Le Jardin Bistro, timestamped 11:47 p.m. on a Wednesday. No note, no explanation. I stared at it, heart twisting like smoke. She was supposed to be at her new office, working late to prove herself. I tucked the slip back in the drawer, telling myself it was nothing, maybe she'd met a colleague who offered to walk her to the train. I wanted to believe it. Our Saturday morning ritual was pancakes and jazz music in the sunlit kitchen. I still hear the saxophone riff when I think of that time. On one of those mornings, I noticed her phone buzz on the counter. A single message preview, call me when you're alone. The name field was blank. She shot me a quick smile, pocketed the phone, and greeted me with a kiss on the forehead. I folded the paper towels over that nagging doubt and flipped the pancake. It was only a message, nothing more. In the months that followed, our weekends were filled with small victories, choosing new curtains for the living room, planning dinners with friends, brushing off the wider cracks in our routine. We installed that antique clock above the mantel, its pendulum swinging with a steady tick-tock, tick-tock, and she said it reminded her of the steadfastness she wanted to bring to our family. I agreed, marveling at how something so quiet could feel so reassuring. Yet, late one autumn evening, I caught a glimpse of her reflection in the foyer mirror, her eyes distant, phone clasped in both hands as she texted under the soft glow of the lamp. I paused behind her, listening to the rapid click of her keys, the low vibration of messages arriving. When she finally turned, startled, I greeted her with a hug and a gentle, "You okay?" She shrugged it off. "Just finalizing a few details," she said. "Big presentation tomorrow." I nodded and let her slip past me into the hallway, all the while feeling the pendulum of my certainty swing in the opposite direction. It was in the pile of our joint bank statements one Sunday afternoon that evidence began to crystallize. I spread them on the kitchen island, rent withdrawals for co-working spaces I'd never heard of, dinners at bistros I'd never walked into, and cab fares zigzagging through parts of town that made no sense. I highlighted each line in red, even as my pulse hammered. The red ink bled through the paper, mirroring the fear that bled into my thoughts. I sat there, head in my hands, until my phone lit up with her cheery text, "Running late. Pick up anything you want on your way home." I stared at the screen. The words should have comforted me, but instead they felt like salt in an open wound. I typed, "No, thanks," and deleted it. I typed, "Everything's fine," and deleted it. Finally I wrote, "Don't overdo it." She replied almost instantly with a heart emoji. That night, I opened her laptop, left unlocked in trust, and scrolled through her email drafts. One was addressed to M. Subject line, "Last night was perfect." The body was empty, but the timestamp was midnight. I closed the lid before I could read further. Guilt tugged at me, but so did anger. I whispered to the empty room, "You're not protecting me anymore." The following week, I cornered her gently in our bedroom. I held up the dinner receipt from Le Jardin Bistro and the draft email's metadata. Her eyes clouded over for the first time, but she spat out a lie so fast I barely heard it. "That's for research," she snapped. "For my office's new catering program." The words tasted sour. I wanted to stab holes in the neat fabric of her excuses, but I merely pressed the receipt into her palm and walked away. Sleep abandoned me in the days that followed. I lay awake listening to the clock's pendulum, tick-tock, tick-tock, each swing mocking the trust I'd given too freely. I began tracking her comings and goings, noting the times she left for work, the times she returned home, the gaps between. I compared them to her call logs, to the occasional running late messages, to the empty parking spots at her office building when I checked at lunch. The pattern formed a crooked map leading straight to her deception. Still, I clung to the hope it was a mistake. An indiscretion that, once confronted, she'd confess and beg forgiveness. I pictured our wedding day in the chapel, vows echoing under the stained glass windows. I pictured us rebuilding, stronger this time. But when I saw her face reflected in the cafe window, lips curved in a secret smile as she chatted with someone who wasn't me, that hope shattered like porcelain. It was then I understood, this was never about honest mistakes. It was about a lie that had grown into a betrayal so all-consuming it swallowed our past and left me with nothing but fragments. And yet, as the pieces lay scattered at my feet, I realized something else. Each fragment was a clue, a foundation for the justice I would soon demand. In the hush before dawn, I wrote down every receipt, every message preview, every whispered alibi. I dated each note and tucked them into a manila folder labeled simply Evidence. The folder lay on my desk beside the antique clock, its pendulum paused at the 24th hour, waiting for the moment I would swing back. I sat across from Marianne Harlow in her crisp, glass-walled office, the city skyline stretched out behind her like a silent jury. Her desk was immaculate, folders stacked by color, pens aligned like soldiers. I placed my manila folder labeled Evidence between us. The polished surface reflected the pendulum of my antique clock, paused at 6 o'clock, as if holding its breath along with me. "Mr. Caldwell," Marianne began, her tone professional but not unkind, "you've done remarkably thorough work." She leafed through receipts, messages, timestamps. Each page confirmed what I'd already known, deception so pervasive it read like a scripted conspiracy. I watched her fingers tap the files into neat piles, financial records on the left, communications in the center, photos and notes on the right. It felt right to see the chaos I'd endured transformed into a precise framework. Over the next hour, we drafted a plan. First, a petition for temporary custody and support. Marianne explained each clause, what grounds I'd assert, which precedents favored my case, the deadlines I needed to respect. Her voice was calm, measured, each legal term anchoring me further away from emotional freefall. I took notes: file by June 15th, serve notice by June 20th, compile witness list by June 10th. With every deadline I set, my breath steadied. This was not helplessness, but action. Next came evidence preservation. Marianne recommended notarizing key documents, the Le Jardin receipt, the cafe photos, the email metadata. We arranged to meet at an external notary the following morning. Afterward, she called in a private investigator, someone who would install discreet cameras at the front door and driveway, capture license plates, record comings and goings. I sat with him in a dim hotel lobby, handed over a digital copy of my phone logs, and watched the gears of his briefcase click into place: camera specs, installation schedules, data encryption protocols. By midday I found myself in a small conference room at our local bank, drafting new account signatures and separating joint assets. The banker sorted through signature cards until he handed me fresh ones. "Here, this ensures she can't move funds without your authorization." I signed carefully, feeling each pen stroke as another brick laid in the fortress I was building around my family's future. That evening, I convened with my brother, David, at his workshop. The smell of sawdust and oil soothed me. His domain was tangible, unlike the abstract betrayals echoing in my living room. He handed me 2 small security cameras, black and compact. "Mount these on your porch in the garage," he said. "We'll wire them into a system you can monitor from your phone." I nodded, noting the model numbers in my notebook, imagining the night I'd catch her return, straight evidence of her patterns. On Thursday, I met Clara, our longtime friend and counselor, in her sunlit office. She offered a safe space to vent and strategize. "You're doing the right thing," she said, eyes steady behind rectangular frames. "Anger can be a powerful ally, when directed purposefully." We role-played the deposition, how I'd respond if she claimed innocence, how to stay composed if she cried or raged. I practiced delivering the phrase, "I have irrefutable proof," until it felt natural, void of tremor. Friday morning, I visited the notary. I spread out my documents, the cafe photographs, the restaurant receipt, the login history printouts. Each page bore a notarized stamp before I left, crisp and final. On my drive home, the pendulum clock on my dashboard ticked at 6:01 p.m., a subtle reminder of my own steady resolve. Back at home, I stood in the foyer beneath the antique clock whose pendulum still hovered at 6 o'clock, the same moment my world shattered. I taped my notarized documents to the bulletin board I'd installed, a map of her lies on a stark white background. I stepped back, chest tight, and allowed myself a moment of pride. This was no longer about unanswered questions, but about the undeniable truth I held. Late that night, I drafted the initial custody proposal. 2 days a week with our daughter, full decision-making authority on schooling and healthcare, and a fair division of our savings. I saved the draft to a secure folder and sent a copy to Marianne. In the silence of my office, I felt certainty bloom where doubt once festered. By the end of the week, my calendar was peppered with appointments: family court pre-filing consultation, meeting with the investigator, debrief with Marianne, and a final session with Clara. Each entry I typed felt like progress, my life no longer adrift, but navigating a course toward resolution. As I closed my laptop, I glanced up at the mantel clock. Its pendulum had finally swung past 6 o'clock, signaling a new phase. I stood, stretched, and ran my hand over the smooth wooden frame. No longer just a reminder of betrayal, it had become a metronome marking each step of my strategic response. Tomorrow, the next piece would fall into place, and with each action, I claimed more of my life back. The lawyer's conference room was hushed when I entered, its long mahogany table polished to a mirror finish. Morning light slanted through the blinds, casting lines across the surface like prison bars. Marianne sat at the head, her expression unreadable. I took the seat opposite my wife, who perched on the edge of her chair as if spring-loaded. I placed the framed wedding photo between us, our smiling faces beneath an arch of roses, and set my manila folder beside it. The photo's glass caught the light, reflecting my wife's anxious eyes back at her. "Before we begin," I said, voice calm, "take a look at this." I nudged the folder forward. "And at this." I tapped the frame. "This is what you destroyed." Her lips parted, a flicker of panic in her stare. She glanced at Marianne, seeking refuge. The lawyer offered none. I opened the folder. First came the notarized cafe photographs, 2 prints of her and him at midnight, her hand over his knee. Underneath, the Le Jardin Bistro receipt, crisp and stamped. Then the email metadata, the PDF of her draft confessing love to M. Each document was a brick in the case I'd built. My wife's voice trembled. "John, I cut her off." "Please," I said, straightening. "Let me finish." I lifted the wedding photo. "This is the life we promised each other." I set it face up. "And these," I spread the evidence, "are the lies you sold me instead." Silence fell. The only sound was the soft tick of my pocket watch, the same design as our mantel clock, echoing through the room. My pulse aligned with it, tick, tock, tick, tock. She swallowed. "I'm sorry," she whispered, gaze sliding to the floor. "Sorry isn't enough." My tone was gentle but ironclad. "You groomed me for your plan, office fictions, fake schedules, staged fatigue. Every 'I love you' was a rehearsal for this betrayal." Her eyes flicked up, wet. I didn't mean to." "You meant every calculated word," I said. "You meant for him to replace me. But I won't disappear quietly." I reached into my jacket and pulled out a single key, the one she'd given me as our home key on our 10th anniversary. "This belonged to both of us," I said, voice low. "Tonight, I return it." I laid the key atop the wedding photo. She gasped. Marianne's pen hovered over the settlement draft. I rose and walked slowly around the table, collecting the photographs and documents as I went. Each print I slid into a new folder labeled Court Exhibit A, B, and so on, my methodical reclaiming of truth. My wife stood, backing away. "John, please." I turned, meeting her gaze. "The divorce petition is ready. Custody terms have been drafted. Support calculations are finalized." I paused, letting the reality settle in her eyes. "You will sign within 7 days, or I file. No negotiations, no delays." Her shoulders sagged. She looked at Marianne, pleading. The lawyer simply nodded and slid the papers across the table toward her. Marianne cleared her throat. "Ms. Caldwell, the settlement terms are equitable. They reflect the best interests of your child and the dissolution of this marriage." She offered a pen. Hands shaking, my wife reached for the pen. She paused, eyes wet, and signed. The click of the pen against the paper sounded like closing bars. I retrieved the signed documents and placed them in my folder. Then I picked up the wedding photo and the key. I held them both for a moment, the emblem of our vows and the instrument of my emancipation, before sliding them into my jacket pocket. As I turned to leave, the room seemed smaller, the light starker. My wife's shoulders trembled behind me. Marianne stood, offering a small nod of support. I walked out into the hallway, each step deliberate. Beyond the conference room door, the world awaited, but I carried with me the quiet victory of reason prevailing over deceit. And the steady pulse of justice, ticking like that steadfast clock, marked the end of her chapter and the first breath of mine. The courthouse steps felt oddly warm beneath my palms as I exited, documents tucked into my briefcase like a talisman. The settlement had been finalized that morning: sole custody, fair spousal support, and equitable division of assets. No theatrics, no drawn-out battles, just the clear terms I'd laid out and she'd signed. A finality as precise as the pendulum of my antique clock back home, now swinging past 6 without hesitation. Back at the house, I paused in the foyer under the clock's familiar face. Its steady tick-tock greeted me like an old friend. I touched the wood frame, feeling its grain beneath my fingers, and allowed myself a breath of relief. The folder marked Court Exhibit still lay on the bulletin board, but I peeled it off one page at a time and slid each document into a fireproof safe I'd installed weeks earlier. Their power now lay dormant, reduced to ink and paper rather than biting reminders of betrayal. In the living room, sunlight spilled across the floorboards. I retrieved the framed wedding photo from my jacket pocket, the one I'd taken from the conference room table, and placed it, face down, on the mantel. It wasn't bitterness I felt, just acceptance. The image of us together belonged to the past. Next to it, I set a new photograph I'd taken this morning, my daughter's laughing face, caught mid-twirl in her ballet class. That was the life I would build moving forward. I poured coffee and settled at my desk, where a blank document awaited. I typed the title, Rebuilding from the Rubble, a Guide for the Betrayed. In the past weeks, I drafted outlines and gathered insights during my sessions with Clara. Now I began to write in earnest, simple chapters on documenting evidence, seeking counsel, and channeling anger into purposeful action. Every keystroke felt like another plank laid in my new foundation. Later, I walked our daughter to the park, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows at our feet. She grabbed my hand, chattering about swings and ice cream. I inhaled the scent of cut grass and childhood, and for the first time in months, my chest felt unburdened. That evening, I logged into the small blog I'd set up. My first post was raw but calm, a succinct recounting of my journey from shock to strategy to renewal. I closed with an invitation: if you're reading this, know that reason and resolve can outlast the loudest betrayals. You're not alone. I hit publish and watched the page refresh, comments already trickling in from strangers who felt seen. As dusk settled, I returned home and glanced one last time at the mantel clock. Its pendulum swung freely past 6, past 7, into the promise of tomorrow. The wounds of deception would fade, scars, yes, but reminders of the strength I discovered within myself. And in that quiet moment, I understood, justice had not only been served, it had set me free.